In this edition of GSN In Conversation, we talk with Dennis Lukens, Benque United FC owner.
So could you start by just, how did the season go? What were the biggest takeaways and challenges you faced?
Well, I think it went extremely well. I mean, when I came on board, the club had lost all their games in the first half of the season. As you know, they lost the last two games 19-1. They played with 9 players on the field the last two games, which certainly is not acceptable anywhere, certainly not at the professional level. As we know, the Belize Premier League is a FIFA professional league, and to have a team get hammered like that is, really at the bottom of the barrel. So we took over. I took over. I became the owner of the club, after that they got shellacked 19-1. The bad news is, there were some good aspects to it, obviously. I think the coach did a great job preparing the players, training the players, bringing them together. He brought in a few foreigners that performed well. We sent one foreigner from America, who played in the UPSL for us. So they were helpful. I think it was difficult for the players from Belize to make training. Many of them lived, some distance away. With the foreign players, it became a challenge because we didn't really have housing for them, and we had to rent Airbnbs, which were quite expensive. That's life. So in general, on the field, I thought it was a really good season.
Yeah. And I
And I'll,
believe you
I'll,
made. Oh, sorry.
I'll lastly say that was a credit to the head coach, to the assistant coach, Victor, who worked so hard. Jorge, of course, Nunes is the head coach. The two of them worked so hard on behalf of the club. And then the players, they worked really hard, and under not so easy conditions were successful.
And yeah, I think you did, better job than probably any other owner could have did with that team.
Well, that's what I am, a turnaround specialist. This was a tough turnaround, and let's hope we can keep moving in the right direction.
Yeah, of course. And could you give like the audience that doesn't know your story? I mean, you are a great coach and a great owner now. So, what kind of is your? Can you explain your background and the different teams that you currently own?
I was born and raised in New York, and thankfully, the gym teacher, Ralph Seaman, at lunchtime when I was in about 6th grade, started rolling out a soccer ball. And thank God he rolled out that soccer ball every lunchtime, and I played like, we all played and just ran up and down the field. And, I was good at it. And so it's like everything else in life, when you're good at something, you continue on. And then, unfortunately, it's a long, boring story. I'll make it short. Unfortunately, I played on the junior high school team and was the top scorer. And unfortunately, I was a ski racer as well, a high-level ski racer.
Really?
I was I was a Northern Vermont All-Star. I was about to race against the West Coast in a big race, and unfortunately, I broke my leg. I broke my ankle 3 times, had it operated on twice, had my shin bone taken out and put into my ankle, screwed together. So I was a cripple when I was like 13, walking with a cane. It was really hard because people were calling me a cripple. Kids were making fun of me, and I couldn't play anything, couldn't do anything. But I recovered somehow, some way, trained so hard in my house and in my basement with the encouragement of my family. And I became the all-time leading goal scorer in the history of my high school. I was a big-time player. Then I got recruited to play college. We went to the Final Eight 4 years. We were New England champions 4 years in a row. Then I had a trial with the North American Soccer League. They offered me a contract, and I turned it down foolishly and took a job teaching. One of the great mistakes of my life, not to sign with the Boston Minutemen, because a week later, Eusebio signed with them. So I could have played with Eusebio and against Pele, but I decided to be a school teacher instead. But then later on, so I was coaching soccer there, and I said, geez, I'm doing good as a coach in junior high school soccer. Maybe I should try to be a college coach, and I became a college coach. Then we did well there. We made the Final Four twice and set a bunch of school records, and I said, geez, maybe I should be a professional coach, and I became a professional coach. Then I got a job coaching in St. Lucia as the under-23 national team of St. Lucia. I lived there for 2 years. It was fantastic. I loved the people from St. Lucia. We participated in the Olympic qualification tournament, and I was the coach. It was a really, flying to the different places and countries and the islands and taking ships. It was unbelievable, actually, a great experience. And then I went to Ukraine. My son's mother is Ukrainian, and we had met, and she said, let's go to visit. The job ended in St. Lucia because the Olympics, we didn't qualify. She said, let's go to Ukraine and visit my mother for 2 weeks. And I stayed there for 15 years and built a big, beautiful house with no mortgage, put all my cash that I made from coaching into it. I coached in the Premier League of Ukraine. The first game when I was an assistant coach for the FC Sevastopol, we played against Shakhtar Donetsk, who 3 days before had just played Barcelona. And I'm sitting there saying, wow, this is rarefied air. This is a great place to be as an American, sitting on the bench with someone who just played against Barcelona. So that was great stuff. And then I became head coach of Hirson Cristal, then in the second division, and then I became head coach of MFK Nikolaev. I became the first and only American to coach professional soccer in the country of Ukraine and the entire former Soviet Union. They sent television crews down to videotape my training sessions, and my training sessions were watched by like 14 million people in Ukraine. And I went from being an unknown to being extremely well known in Ukraine. It was a great time. I loved my life there. I lived in a beautiful house. I had a BMW shipped over. I don't want to go into it too deeply, but I was there when the war began, and sadly we had to escape that in the first hours of the war by car. My family and I and my nephew we took with us. Thank God I had money. Thank God I had a car. Cruise missiles flying over our heads, screaming jets across the sky. It was really a terrible day.
Yeah, and I know that really means a lot to you. I mean, what happened? I mean, 15 years of your life there, but
Yeah.
so yeah, I know that's tough to talk about. But so I guess my thing is because you own two other clubs, is that correct?
Well, yeah, so I'm an Irish citizen through my late mother, who came across the Atlantic Ocean as a 4-year-old on a ship 101 years ago. So I was able to get a passport through her and through my grandfather. And when we escaped the war, we ended up in Ireland, and I became the director of football for a famous club called Limerick FC, who played against Man City in Ireland in the Champions League many years ago, and against Real Madrid many years ago in the Champions League. And I now am the owner, my company is the owner of Limerick FC. I've paid for it and have a signed written agreement. I then started a club called the Tampa Bay Mutiny here in America in the UPSL. As many people know, in America we have MLS, USL, and UPSL. And so this is an amateur club, but it's third and fourth tier. So we find young players, prepare them, develop them through the UPSL, and then we can send them on. We did take one player from our UPSL club and send him to Belize, and he signed a professional contract. So that's the business plan, and then we'd also send players on to Ireland and Europe and the rest. Our objective in Belize is to develop this club into where look, I didn't tell the little bit about when I left the coaching job in St. Lucia. We didn't go directly to Ukraine. Actually, we stopped in Belize for a month.
Really?
Okay, and so I was invited to go there, and I applied for the national team of Belize, and so my son's mother and I stayed and lived in a little hut right on the sea, and I was doing interviews with them, and we traveled all over the Belize to the Maya ruins. I got a great picture of me in a
Oh,
Manchester United shirt at the Maya ruins, and we just loved it. We loved the Belize. It was fantastic. Everybody treated us so well, and that was when she said, "Well, let's go to Ukraine for 2 weeks," and as I said, it became 15 years. But I was in Belize and really loved it. So when this opportunity came around, I said, "Hey, it's a FIFA professional league. Why not?" The objective would be to develop young Belize players, prepare them, develop them, and then transfer them, because that's where the money is. It's a business. We do it because we love the sport, but the biggest. The Belize Premier League it has the same rights and privileges as the La Liga in Mexico. To buy a club in Mexico is $100 million.
yeah. The difference.
MLS is $500 million. Okay, Belize Premier League has the same rights and privileges as Major League Soccer. So the team that qualifies for the CONCACAF Champions League from Belize could play against Inter Miami with Messi on the pitch and David Beckham sitting next to you in the owner's box. I mean, this is all reality. This is true.
Yeah.
So it is a really great opportunity. All the people that I have met through the Football Federation and through the league have been extremely supportive of us and me, and they see the future too, because it's bright and it's big. So I would really love, not really love to, I will build an academy where we develop young players, prepare them in Belize, find them, and get them ready to play a high-level professional soccer. And I said this before, it's a win-win-win, which is rare in business. The young man wins if we transfer him to Manchester United, because he gets a multi-million-dollar contract, more money than he could ever dream of. He could take care of his family for the rest of his life, and he could play in a stadium with 60, 80,000 people chanting, cheering his name. He could play against the best in the world. He'd live a life that you could only dream of. Manchester United would get a player that we prepared and developed. We gave him, morals. We gave him honesty. We taught him how to respect players and coaches. They'll get a great young man. And then we would get a $10 million transfer fee, we would hope. But we would, if he's transferred, because he's signed to a FIFA professional contract. This is not amateur football. This is professional. So everybody wins. It's crazy, but it's all true. Yeah. So Belize has a bright future, the Premier League of Belize.
And, I think the academy, like you said, your goal is to build the academy. I think that's something that really Belize needs. You know what I mean? I think that's really going to be great for the players because, of course, just as, you said, I mean, there's a lot of untapped potential and talent there. And so is your strategy, you're taking players also from some of, like, your club, like the Mutiny Club in Tampa Bay, right? So are you going to continue to bring in players from your American club while also signing players from Belize and developing them both and then shipping them out if possible?
Yeah, excuse me, I have a little bit of a cold. We would take players from anywhere. So the Belize Premier League has 8 foreign roster spots. So that means you can bring in 8 players from anywhere in the world, sign them to a professional contract, and you can transfer them. Okay, yeah. So I previously brought players from Nigeria. I just happened to have a connection in Nigeria, and I brought players in from Nigeria. I signed a player, multiple players from Nigeria, and I prepared them, transferred them. I sent one guy on to the Premier League of Ukraine, which is ranked 9th among domestic leagues in Europe. So he went to Donetsk and played there. The sad thing is he got hurt like the first week when his first game threw an anterior cruciate. Oh. So he didn't really get to go on any further, but he got a chance to play in the Ukrainian Premier League from Nigeria. Yeah. And I found them by watching videos of the Nigerian U17 national team, which had won the World Cup that year. I had it analyzed by a video analytic guy. Mm-hmm. I found the best players for left back, center midfield, and striker. And then I found them on social media, contacted them, and then did Zoom calls with their parents and the boys, got them visas, and brought them to Ukraine. I would have to drive to the airport in Odessa with a lawyer. I was the president of my club. I owned a club in Ukraine, and we would go there, and we had to get them through immigrations. Those young men would hug me when they came off the airplane. Yeah. One young man dropped to his knees and hugged me. I made him stand up, but we gave him a chance, an opportunity. So I will again go back to Nigeria. I've got scouts there working on our behalf already. But again, I'm not going to discriminate against anybody. We would take them from Mexico, from Nigeria, from America, from anywhere. Yeah. The main thing is that they've got to be young. If a player is 24 years old and is in a developed country, call it Mexico for lack of a better example, if you're not playing in La Liga, then he's really not worth anything because La Liga is going to snap him up. So finding the kid floating around in Mexico would be difficult because the Mexican teams have academies and they prepare and develop, and then they sign them just like we would want to do. But for me, a big thing is that Belize is a beautiful country with many great places, restaurants, and people live well in many cases. But there's certainly areas like all countries where there's ghetto, where young players don't have a chance really, and they love the game of soccer, and then there's nowhere for them to go, and they give it up, and maybe they join a gang. I don't know, but soccer, football gives young men and women opportunity. You can dream. I mean, Maradona came out of the worst ghetto in all of Argentina, and he dreamed and he played, and somehow, some way, he became Maradona. Yeah. So there's kids in Belize like Maradona, and they need chances and they need opportunities. So I will build an academy wherever we end up. I'm not sure that Belmont is the right place for us. We'll see about that. And I want to develop young Belize, but sure, it'd be great to get a Nigerian kid as well. But we're in Belize. Why not develop Belize players and invest in Belize?
Yeah, of course, and that's why I appreciate you doing that, because I really, want to see as many opportunities for these players, if possible, of course. Um, and, could you give us like some insight of what it was like when you got the team and all these contracts were kind of handed over to you? How did you have to deal with all of those? I mean, of course, that's a lot to inherit, right? I mean, when you're getting this team. So how did you deal and work through that?
Well, unfortunately, the previous owners lied to us, lied to my face, committed fraud. I was buying something that was not as it was sold to me. And if you bought a car and it was supposed to have a 400 horse engine and it only had 200 horse engine, you could sue the car dealership for fraud. Well, that's the reality here. I was told that they had sponsors twice to my face in different meetings. And when I spoke to the former director of operations, he started laughing in my face a week later. Says there are no sponsors. So I'd already bought the club. I was shown financial statements from 3 years ago, which showed 180,000 of income and 190,000 of expenses, $10,000 Belize loss, which is only 5,000 of U.S. loss. I asked repeatedly for recent statements, and I was not given them. So fraud was committed, and we'll just see how that goes in the future. Because there was no income, absolutely no income, no sponsors, no ticket sales, no bar, no concessions, no T-shirt sales, no merchandise, nothing. For example, the last game of the season, just to put the game on, cost about 2,000 US dollars without salaries, with just renting the stadium, having people sell tickets, having a staff there, a medical staff, having a transportation in case someone got hurt, food after, about 2,500 US dollars. We took in $50. So that's a $2,450 loss on one game without paying anybody, without salaries. And then you add in the salaries and the housing, and it significant losses every week after week after week. So that's going to have to change. The objective is to break even. I'm not expecting to make money, and then someday transfer a player for some significant amount of money, and then it's a profitable business. It doesn't matter what business it is, no matter how much you love football, or whether you have an art store. If you love art and you have an art store, if you're losing money day after day, week after week, month after, you're not going to last very long. You'll still love art, or you'll still love football, but you'll give up eventually. Or you have a car dealership and you're losing money, you'll eventually give up the car dealership. So we need to find a solution, and I'm working on. The good news is I do have a great deal of experience in football ownership and management. I owned a club in America in the USISL. I was part owner of a club in the USL. I was president of both clubs. I played in the USISL. I also owned a club and was president of a club in Ukraine, as I mentioned. And I was the president of of a club in the major indoor soccer league. And I was charged to sell sponsorships, and I sold $1.3 million of sponsorships. I sold a $750,000 sponsorship to a company called Comcast, 250,000 a year. And how did I do that? I'm rambling on here a bit, but this is something that Belize has to go after, because right now the games are televised by the national television network, and the clubs don't get a nickel. All the money goes to the Belize Premier League, which is absurd. We don't get a nickel. So I could live stream our games. I'm not allowed to now, but I could live stream our games across some other network. I could have a halftime show. I could have a pregame show. I could sell that game as the Budweiser game and get Budweiser to be the sponsor for 30,000 US dollars of that game. I could get, Walmart to be the title sponsor for the year. And we could make every game the Walmart Premier League Benque United presentation. Because that's where the money is. So with our games, we would have 40 or 50 people sitting in the stands, But if it's watched by 5,000 people or 10,000 people, then it has value to Walmart or a sponsor, because the money is when you can televise games and multiply the audience 100 times. Let's imagine let's take Verdes, who has, is in Benque, in the stadium where we used to be, which I don't understand how that all happened or how that worked.
No.
How we were down in Benque, we had $180,000 of income, $90,000 of sponsorship income, and we moved to Belmont where we have zero. It's almost like someone's trying to put the club into bankruptcy. But Verdes is there now, and they've got really good crowds. But certainly, if they were able to televise those games themselves, who knows how many thousand people they get to watch the game on the television. And again, going back to the Walmart or Budweiser or whoever you want to name, if you can get 50,000 people, you don't have to just televise the Belize. You can televise it worldwide.
Of course,
there's crazy soccer guys. My best friend Keith Clark, he watches games all the time. Every Sunday and Saturday morning, he's watching he's watching the games. He wakes up early. He watches Premier League games. He watches games in Spain, et cetera, et cetera. We'd have people watching games worldwide, the Belize Premier League. And not only would it help the teams individually, but it would boost the league and boost players.
Of course.
So you got one young player who's really doing it, and he's scoring goals. And there's a scout from Barcelona watching that game on the television.
Yeah, exactly.
They call me up and say, "Hey, can you send him over here for a trial?"
Yeah, it creates opportunities for, like you said, the players, everybody involved. I mean, I think there's definitely a lot of sponsorship opportunities that are being missed currently. I mean, as far as like you said, and of course, if you were able to get it live streaming on some free live streaming platform and bring in more viewers and things. Because I've even had like a person in Germany that reached out to me, and it was asking like, how can I watch this game, and they were able to get the next gen, like the national channel subscription. But the thing is, if this was more open and accessible to people in other countries, like you said, not only scouts but also the viewership for sponsors and things like that.
Well, I had a really difficult time myself getting onto the television bit
Really?
there. It was difficult for me, really difficult. Anyway.
Yeah, and that's something. Yeah, I haven't really looked into, but I'm sure. Yeah, that I don't know what they're gonna do about that. And do you know how long that contract is as far as the Premier League of Belize with them, or
I don't
is
know.
that something they didn't share? Okay.
I don't know.
And what happened with? I know in the past we've had conversations about like the housing and things for the players. What was that situation like?
I explained in the last interview that it was quite difficult and really expensive. We got there late. The season was about to start. I was trying to turn everything around, and we didn't have permanent housing for the players, and it cost much more than it should have, like $25,000 just to house the international players. While they were helpful to us, they didn't really have any transfer value because they were in their 20s. But again, everything happened quick, and the coach was the person that found these guys, and they did help us on the pitch and win a couple of matches. So let's just put that behind us and be grateful to them as they worked hard and did their job that they were hired to do. But again, it was very expensive to have them with us. Then we had some immigration problems, which we solved, but it cost a bit of money to do that as well. It was a learning experience for sure.
Yeah. Well, I know, I know in the next season and however long you, have this team and continue to develop players and the academies you build, I know you're going to do great. Obviously, you're one of the most experienced, probably, coaches in the world, one of the best candidates for this. So, yeah, I know you're going to do great things with this, and I appreciate you coming on here. I know we've had some, issues in the past as far as technical issues, recording and things, but I appreciate you doing this.
Well, again, I've lived in multiple different countries. I really loved Belize when I was there 20 years ago, applying for the national team job way back when. Since then, I've gone on to do a lot of different things. I went and got it's funny, I was coaching in Ukraine in the second division. I became the first and only American to coach professional soccer in the country of Ukraine and the entire former Soviet Union. And I'm one of only 6 Americans to coach professional soccer in Europe. There's like 5 million American coaches. And then I went on, they told me at the end of the season that you can't coach anymore. You don't have a UEFA license. And now I had a United States Soccer Federation A license. They said, no, it's no good here. So I ended up having to go get my B license in Northern Ireland, my UEFA B, and then my UEFA A in Northern Ireland, and it's 2 weeks. And then I got my UEFA Pro license, the highest license in the world in Ukraine, in the Ukrainian and Russian language, which I speak.
Wow.
I speak Ukrainian and Russian, but that was hard. That was really difficult. But anyway, I love the game. I love football, and like all of us, I do it because I love it.
Yeah.
And I want to make this a success. But to be a success, we have to be financially successful as well. We just can't bleed money. We got to make money. Well, not make money. We have to at least break even or come close.
Yeah, well, I think you have the right plans as far as business-wise too to be able to do that. And like I said, I appreciate you coming on here. Really, I know the audience. I've had, there's been people that really wanted to hear this interview. So I do appreciate you coming on here.
I'm going to end by saying that I want to thank the Football Federation and the Premier League of Belize. Everybody's been really good to me and helped me a lot, and I am a big believer in Belize football. I believe that there's a huge future here, and so I want to be part of that future, and I will do all that I can to drive that future forward from my position and with my club. But I really think that the big things are in front of Belize football.
Yeah, of course. I agree with that. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Dennis.
All
Thank you
right.
for your time.
Okay. Thank you for having me on. See you.
Yeah, take
Bye-bye.
care.
Bye, Austin.